Hi folks, and welcome to another episode of Tag Along with Chet. I'm sitting in my office here, in my hangar actually, and when I was at home I was thinking, you know, I've got all these vlogs about flying, which is fine. You know, lots of guys like and gals like the flying aspect of it, but there's only so much you can do with flying the airplane, unless you're doing a trip around the world, which I'd love to do, but obviously I can't do that with the aircraft I've got. But in any case, let that, we'll just drop that. I've done a lot of flying, which I think probably has a little bit of adventure behind it. At least that's so I'm told. My better half, she keeps on telling me that I should write a book. But the problem with that is you have to know how to write, and I'm just no good at that sort of stuff. So I thought what I'd do is I'd put together a series of vlogs about my flying experiences that I've had over the last, let's see, I started flying in April 4th, 1967. That's when I started going for my license. And it's now 2018, just coming up almost 2019. So you figure out, you do the math. And since then, I think I got 5 logbooks that are all pretty well full. Well, maybe 6. Yeah. Anyway, enough logbooks. And every one of these entries has a story. And some of them are actually quite interesting. So I thought what I'd do is I'd put something together for the new year, and they'll just be sporadic. They'll kind of pop out as they come, as I get them together. The first experience I had with flying was actually something that was sort of instilled upon me by my dad. He was obviously I'm a war baby, or just after the war when I was born. But he used to tell me lots of things about during the war, and when we immigrated from Europe, we came from Holland, so obviously everyone knows the history of the Second World War there and the liberation and everything else. And so there's lots of stories that I was told by my dad when I was out there, and I think deep down he always wanted to fly because he was the one that was kind of pushing me towards that goal. And he would take me to, at that time, when we immigrated, we'd lived in the southern Ontario, so we were always down in Moulton Airport, or now known as Toronto International Airport. And he used to take me up there when you still had access to basically viewing the airplanes from the outside. And it was on top of a building which was just right beside where they built the Avro Aero, and it was still AVRO was the name of the company out there where they're building it. And we used to watch the Vanguards and Viscounts from TransCanada Airlines come in, and I used to write down the numbers, the tail number, the tail registrations, and just got a real kick out of that. And then we used to have a hamburger and fries in the restaurant, which I just thought were just great, because in those days that was a big deal, especially for a guy like me. And then I believe I was I was a member of some kind of a modeling club where we built everything out of wood. And they had a thing put together whereby we would get a flight on a TransCanada Airlines Viscount. And all it did was, I think it flew over Lake Ontario. I think we were only up for maybe a half hour, if that. And I remember all the kids on the flight went to the flight deck, and wow, we just thought that was just great to see that. And I think that's probably what instilled me for that drive to become to learn how to fly. And of course the ultimate aim was to get in with the airlines. I made some coffee, by the way. That's not bad coffee, actually. As time went on, I wanted to learn how to fly. Of course, I didn't have any money for that, and I was still in school, so of course model airplanes came into play. So I remember the first model airplane I bought was a Corsair. It was one of those Second World War Corsair fighter airplanes from probably Baba Black Sheep, if you remember that program. And of course, you younger guys probably wouldn't remember this, but anyway, that used to be a big thing on TV. And they had a Corsair. I think they were Corsairs. And anyway, I bought one of these. It wasn't very big. It was maybe at a wingspan about like this, and it had the bust of a guy all dressed up in his flying outfits and his goggles and so forth. And it was one of those fly-by-wire ones where you held had two strings, and it was hooked up to the I guess it was the rudder, and I think it was just the elevator. I think it was. I can't remember. Yeah, it was just the elevator. And this thing would, you need two people, one to hold the thing while you got the thing going, and it was a little Win-Mac engine. It was a 049 Win-Mac engine, and it ran on that stinky fuel. And anyway, you flip the prop over and you get the thing going. And then I remember we bought this thing actually when we were on holidays in Michigan visiting some friends or some relatives of ours. And so we were behind this schoolyard, or in this schoolyard, and Dad would hold the airplane, and I got out, held this thing, not having a clue how I was going to work this. And what you're supposed to do is, as the thing takes off, you're supposed to get some tautness to the string so the thing would fly around and around, and you'd just be in the middle holding this thing as it was going around. Anyway, I said to Dad, okay, let go of it. And Dad let go of it. Well, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and the thing just came right at me, chewed up the control lines and everything, and I just ran. I dropped everything and I ran. Anyway, the thing crashed. It didn't break, but the cockpit, the plastic canopy, it flew off, and the guy that was in it, he flew out. He was just glued in anyway. But anyway, I put it all back together again, and never to be flown again because I was too scared to fly the thing. So it just sat or hung in my bedroom ceiling, or hung from my bedroom ceiling for quite a while. And then after that, I think I built some balsa wood models, and I think I built a Cessna 180 or something like that. And then of course, now I started getting involved in the aviation industry, and I finished high school and got my secondary school diploma, and I ended up going to a place in I can't remember if it's Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas, but they're right. Anyway, they're right in the border there of each other, state line. I think it was Missouri. And I went to a school there. It was called National School of Aeronautics. Now, it had nothing to do with learning how to fly. It was basically ground-related jobs. So it was all operational stuff, weather, weight and balance. It was basically more operational, and also they got involved in with the females that were down there, and there were some good-looking females, I'll tell you. Anyway, the young ladies, I remember having lots of parties. Anyway, we won't go into this. They would teach them how to become flight attendants, and guys didn't, for some reason, weren't involved in that. We got mostly involved into the operations. Oh, we got involved into freight, and anyway. After being down there for a better part of the summer, I came back, I think it was on Labor Day, on September 65, Labor Day. And we'd put out all sorts of resumes prior to that from the school with our pictures and so forth. And we all had uniforms on with nice little wings. And anyway, we looked pretty cool. At least I thought so. And some of the guys were hired right out of school. Now, because we were Canadians going to an American school, we couldn't get hired by an American company, obviously, unless it was in we were back in Canada. But anyway, so we never got any job applications out to the American carriers. But when I got back home, I put out lots of applications and never got a reply until one day. I think it was about maybe a week after I came home, and we flew home from Kansas to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Toronto on a Trans-Canada Airlines Vanguard during a thunderstorm. I remember that was quite exciting. Anyway, I phoned up Canadian Pacific Airlines. I went through the phone book and I saw Canadian Pacific Airlines. Well, I thought, well, I don't know, they weren't that well known because pretty small outfit. You know, they had still DC-3s, DC-6s, and they just started getting rid of their Britannias, and they started getting DC-843 series. So anyway, I called them up, and all I wanted to do was get my foot in the door, because that's the way you got in with the airlines, get your foot in the door, and then work your way into the flying aspect of it. And so that's what I did. And I got a call. I called them up, and fortunately, the young lady at the switchboard said, "Oh, hey, by the way, we're hiring, so you know, I'll put you on with the sales manager." And so the manager of the sales department. I talked to him, and he did a brief discussion, and he said, "Well, come on in on Friday," which was, I think, the next day or day after. He says, "Then we'll go for a further interview, more in depth." Well, when I got there, it was basically, okay, you got this, you got a secondary school diploma. I had a second language, which was Dutch, which I didn't speak that well, but I could make myself understood, and I could understand it. Anyway, I somehow managed to get in with the airline, and yeah, so there I was for a year and a half in sales, and not my billywag. I did everything I tried to get out of there so I could get at the airport, so I could see an airplane and get involved in the operational thing. So that's basically how it started. I got with the airline. It started in actually September 20th, 65. Started with, at that time, Canadian Pacific Airlines, and I think that's where we'll stop right now, because things got more and more interesting after that, because then I actually started flying, or learning how to fly. And that was, well, based on this logbook, Pilot Logbook, Royal Canadian Flying Clubs Association. That was my first logbook. And I'll just give you a little brief history. 67 I started, April 4th. It was in a tri-champ, and the registration was CFNLH. And my instructor was Mr. Norm Ansley. And I think he was a Second World War instructor as well. And we started out with 3 movements of flight, and it was for 30 minutes. And I think the cost at that time was $12. And I think that included the instructor, if I'm not mistaken. So, I don't know, $7 for the airplane, and $5 I think went to the instructor and the school or something. I can't remember. But anyway, that's when it started, folks. So, I'll continue this later on, because it gets more and more interesting, because as you can see, there's one logbook. There's another logbook, this one. And then there's this logbook when I went for the commercial end of it. And there's another logbook. And then there's all the paperwork here for my simulator, which was... yeah, oh no, that was, yeah, anyway, there was a simulator thing in there. Anyway, quite interesting. So anyway, we'll continue with this next time. I think I've probably maybe tweaked your interest, and we'll chat with you next time. So I'm going to finish my coffee, and we'll see you when my next little episode gets put together. Thanks for watching. So long for now.